Welcome to the Agent 251 podcast, the real estate show that looks deep into the work and culture at JWRE, Jason Will Real Estate, in Mobile and Baldwin counties. Jason, Agent 251, investigates and spills the beans on his case closing clues and industry secrets for motivating agents while educating buyers and sellers.
John David Lenard.
Hey.
How are you?
Good.
I started off 2018 with a slogan.
Okay.
It was join a team or start a team.
Okay.
Now, teams seem to be the hot topic in real estate right now.
Right.
You have a team.
Uh-huh.
What made you want to start a team?
Wow, that's a good question. I think what makes us unique, because there's different kinds of teams, right?
Right.
We were what you'd think of as a family team.
Yeah, because your sister works with you, right?
My sister works with me. My father started in real estate in 1985. My mother started on the weekends, even though she was a teacher, and then when she retired from teaching, became a full-time realtor. So one way or the other, whether my sister went willingly or I went, kicking and screaming, we all got sucked into the family business of real estate. So a couple things happened. One, if I were going to do real estate, I thought to myself, I'd want to do it differently, my way. And not to say my father didn't do it a good way, but his way was do a lot of business, burn out, crash, not get out of bed, do a lot of business, burn out, crash, and so on and so forth.
Right. I love that.
So what happened was, growing up with a father in real estate, I didn't see him as much as, maybe I would have liked to have. All right. So when I say I wanted to do it my way, I needed to have that work-life balance, but I'm also very competitive. And I want to achieve great things. So how could I do both at the same time? It seemed to me that what you could accomplish as a family team, while it is more than a single agent, it wasn't enough to get to where I wanted to be in my business and what the potential was. So I set out to begin evolving the team away from the family business and the family style team to what we would now consider kind of more the traditional, where you have not necessarily people of the same genetic code on the team. And so we set out to build the systems and the training and provide value for agents that would maybe do well on their own, maybe do great on their own, but could come and be with us and, be rock stars, if you will.
How long have you been on this team building journey, would you say?
It's been a couple of years now. We've had some growing pains here and there, but we've been really, I think now we're really dialed in, especially with our systems. It's really, really important. I can't tell you how important it is. If you are kind of like that artist person who just goes out there and crushes it, but you still need that balance, and you still need to grow that team, you need an operator. You need that person behind you to take the ideas that you have and facilitate what you need and what your prospective team is going to need so that you can retain top talent, give them a value proposition that's worthwhile, and grow.
Here's some things that I see, is that potential team builders, they always think it's easier than it's actually going to be.
Yeah.
But they make those bad hires initially, and a lot of them give up. And so what I'm trying to encourage people out there to do is to realize you're going to make bad hires.
Yeah.
You're going to have growing pains like you just mentioned.
Yeah.
You're probably going to hire people that are going to steal money or steal leads from you or hurt your reputation.
Yeah.
But it's worth it in the end, would you say?
I would say from where I'm at today, absolutely. First of all, look, I'm just going to say, you probably wouldn't begin if you knew exactly how hard it was going to be, even if it was worth it. So a little naivete isn't necessarily a bad thing. And also, if you're already, joking aside, if you're already a high-producing agent, it's a matter of necessity because you're going to burn out. You don't want to be like my dad, who's working with this group of clients. So what happens? He stops lead generating. So by the time they all close, not only is he, burnt out, but he doesn't even, his funnel is empty. So you realize then, okay, the next step is, well, I need an assistant. And then from there, well, I know I have an assistant, but I have these extra buyers that I can't really handle. I may give them out to some people in my office for a referral fee, But even that's not really quite cutting it. It's hard to follow up with them. They're not doing it the way I would have done it. It's my reputation at stake. Well, then you have your first buyer's agent. You see how natural that happens? You could get into the business from day one and say, I'm going to build a massive team. And I've actually seen it happen. It's not easy to do. But if you're like most agents out there, it's just a natural progression. And I agree with you 100%, Jay. I've made my mistakes. And it happens. But if you don't learn and grow from those mistakes, well, then what was the point of going through the exercise in the first place?
Right. We've got a really successful independent agent in our market with a big national brand. Mm-hmm. His production with an assistant rivals the production of my team, which is about 15 salespeople. So It's him and an assistant. He's a young guy, let's say mid to, probably 35, you'd say. Uh-huh. And he's not somebody I'd want to recruit culturally to my brokerage or even to my team, but he's just a rock star.
Yeah.
So I've reached out to him, and we have these polar opposite opinions. Mm-hmm. He thinks the team is complete bull.
Okay.
He thinks you're giving money away.
Okay.
It is this because it's all the rage in real estate right now. He's actually going on a crusade against team building.
Interesting.
So it's really interesting. So he's crushing it right now. We have a coastal condo market, and he's like a young condo king, and he's a hustler. You'll see him out showing condos at 7:30 at night. Not something I envy. I do envy his bottom line because he's a heck of a lot more profitable than, let's say, I am, as a team builder. But here's the things that I point out is that one day I will be as profitable because we're talking about team growth, team expansion.
Right.
This is a process.
Right.
But what happens if he gets hurt?
Right.
What happens if he gets sick? And like you said, he can't keep up that pace.
That's what comes to mind. There are outliers out there. They are gung-ho, extremely energetic. They'll knock on a door and I'm going to sell your house, I promise. And they'll get a certain percentage of the market. But how long they can sustain that, and as well as that, sustain a level of quality that the consumer is going to be okay with, that's what I would be concerned about. If he can do it, that's great. But you said, and age isn't necessarily, age is a mindset in a lot of ways, but just in general, like how long can you sustain that for? That's my question. Whereas you are maybe taking the turtle approach, the tortoise and the hare. Yeah. You're taking the tortoise approach. Look, we have on our wall, a team always outperforms an individual. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but in team building, eventually you will. That's the bottom line.
Well, and I've heard from people that have picked up buyers from him because they couldn't get him on the phone.
Yeah.
So things are falling through the cracks, even though he's crushing it.
Yeah.
Like I'm talking close to $80 million a year.
I wouldn't be surprised if every market almost has. There's somebody in my market who's exactly like that. And here's the thing: I could be fearful of it. I could try to rearrange how I was going to do, how I was going to build my team. But I've got a plan, and I keep running those numbers, and the plan works. Look, in my class, I was talking about bringing value to the consumer. Right? If you don't bring value to the consumer, let's just say it like it is, you're going to be dead because word gets out. In our area, I live in the Smithtown area. It's got to have 3,000 people on the Facebook group known as Smithtown Moms. 1 or 2 or 3 people going off on any business. Forget realtors, on any business on Smithtown Moms, that business is dead in the water. So you got to take into consideration that you may get away with it in the short term, but over the long term, if you're going to provide consistently good quality service at a level that is profitable and makes it worthwhile for you to even engage in that endeavor, you got to provide good training to high quality people that can deliver that 5-star service.
And from the buyers that are falling through the cracks, he could have one buyer's agent potentially making $100,000 a year, and he's making $100,000 a year extra on top of that. If they're on a 50-50 split, because he does have a high price point and a lot of volume. And I've heard it's really hard to get him on the phone. So
you know what I think then? It sounds to me like this particular person may be coming from a place of scarcity. And that concerns me a little bit, because on our team, we come from a place of abundance. There's always room for more people to be able to attain more for themselves and to provide better service for the consumer.
That's a really good point. It's really all about money for him.
Yeah.
And I think, and he's playing that short game, and you mentioned, that team building is a long-term game. Now, in terms of expansion, are you getting on this expansion bandwagon and wanting to open up in other markets, or are you wanting just to crush Smithtown?
So, my plan...
Are you comfortable sharing that? I mean, maybe I want to let you may just want to say, I'm thinking about it.
I'm thinking about it. It's part of the long-term plan, but the long-term plan could be A, B, or C. It depends on, because you have to be adaptable. The real estate industry is changing at an incredibly fast pace all the time. And so where I thought I was going to be and what I was going to do 3 years ago is not where I actually am today, because I've had to adjust. Now, the expansion model is something I'd be open to, but at this point, it could be any number of things, to be honest.
Well, I think a lot of teams are jumping on that bandwagon, and they don't have one key foundational element in place, and that's having their house in order. Like, they don't have all their systems in place, and they're just trying to go, well, so-and-so's going over here, so I'm going to go over here. I'm going to do what they're doing.
Well, so there's a couple benchmarks I would have to reach before I'd be willing to take that next step. And the number one benchmark would be, is what I'm doing repeatable and scalable? If I could open up a team, I don't know, let's say Connecticut, it's right across the Sound, different state. Just to use it as an example, could they do a transaction over there and use the same transaction coordinator that's in my office? If the answer is no, then it's no. Could I take the systems that have been proven successful here in how the transaction happens, how a consumer comes through, and the training and the recruiting? If that's repeatable and scalable, then it's more likely to be a yes. Because if that's the case, then why not? But I think you're right. I think a lot of people fall into the trap that they think it's going to be easy, or at least not doubly as difficult as what they're doing now. And I think what they're finding is it's actually exponentially more difficult if their house is not in order.
The other issue that I'm seeing happening in the industry, and as it relates to teams, and this agent I referenced from my market kind of has a point on the profitability side.
Yeah.
There are a lot of dysfunctional teams because their house is not in order. They don't have the systems. They have a culture problem. But a big part of it is profitability. So they're kind of giving teams a bad rap, I feel like, because they don't know how to run their business like a business. Can you discuss the ideal profitability model for a team, like what percentage in profit they should be making, what percentage goes to the government, what percentage is operating expenses? How do you handle that?
I think that all in expenses, if you can keep them really no more than 30 to 40%, and this is really before that you're paying out your team. If you can take home at the end of the day 30 to 35% of what's left, then the juice is worth the squeeze, as I like to say.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right, one last question.
Sure.
Accountability seems to be a really big problem for team leaders. I see this, it's rampant in my office. I see it across other offices that we visit. They don't have maybe it's because they get so involved in the relationship. You get so close as a team. And you said you even got family members on your team.
Yeah.
So how do you handle... I know that gamification is a way that Tom Ferry advises us to make it fun.
Yep.
But how do you handle accountability? And sometimes you got to have difficult conversations, right?
Of course. That's part of it. But first of all, if you are the highest producing agent on your team and you're also the team leader, it's kind of a problem. Maybe not in the beginning, but that is also unsustainable, because then what I fear is when your agents need you, then you may not be there for them. And you might have people in place to be your sales manager and all that stuff. I don't know. That's where I'm at right now. Because I mean, if you are a big enough team and you have trained in general manager or sales manager who has the capability, they may be able to take over a lot of that role. But I mean, at some point, you're the CEO. the CEO of a large corporation doesn't go out and they knock on doors and sell, right? They make sure that the ship is running in the right direction, it stays afloat. They go out and get big accounts, but they're not pounding the pavement. At some point, like you were saying, you got to treat it like a business. You have to wean yourself off of doing the transaction, one transaction at a time. So you can look at the big picture and say, okay, if I have 5 agents doing 2 transactions a month minimum to stay on the team, that's going to be X amount of revenue to me. You figure it out that way. Then you make sure it all works, because I know on a daily basis, I'm trying to steer that ship and trying to do transactions at the same time. It's not easy.
So you can't work on your business if you're still predominantly working in your business.
Yes.
Unless you have this rock star sales manager.
Yes.
That could be a caveat.
Yes.
So you're still in production? Is that what I heard you say?
I am drawn to it sometimes, almost like an addiction. But yes, I try to do the minimum number that I can. For this year, it's 15. I've done 7 transactions so far, but even then I believe that I'm not in my business as much as I should be when I'm trying to save transactions, put fires out. It also, it's the emotional energy that I have left in my bandwidth to provide for my team to help them put out their fires and help them grow their business.
Do you think you're slowly going to wean yourself off to being totally out of production?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
That's my goal. It may not be for everybody, but absolutely my goal.
Because I've heard some people say, I need to be doing some level of transactions so I can keep my finger on the pulse of the market, and how to help people in negotiations and stay fresh and current.
I can see that. And, maybe not entirely out, maybe a transaction here or there, because you do learn a lot by being out in the field, being in the trenches, being the general back in London versus the soldier in the trenches of Europe, right? They're 2 completely different perspectives.
Right. So team accountability.
Yeah.
You meet with each one of your agents on a weekly basis for 30 minutes?
Yes. And if you had a if your team is bigger than mine, you might need to have a salesperson a sales manager for this. But I give everybody on my team 30 minutes. We call them face-to-face. So it would be in our Google Calendar, Jason, face-to-face meeting, 30 minutes, and it's the same time every week. Unless something comes up, but we try to hold true. I mean, I'll do them over Zoom if I have to.
Right. Same questions every week.
Pretty much the same. It's a formula. We go through their boomtown, and I just want to focus on their hot leads. Be honest. I start with their new leads, because if I see new leads in our boomtown, they shouldn't be new for more than 24 hours before you've gone in there and changed them to qualify or something else. But from there, I make sure they don't have any new leads. Then we focus on the hot leads, because that's where the paycheck's going to come from. That's where the next consumer, that's where the next transaction is going to come from. And those are the people, we define a hot lead in our boomtown as somebody that's going to transact with you within the next 30 days or less. So if I come back the next week and somebody hasn't transacted with you, I'm still asking, how much further are they along? And that's part of the process. And very often they drop out of hot. Or they may be asking about somebody that's in nurture or qualify. Whoa, this person's hot. Let's put them in hot, right? And so it's back and forth. But then it's also, because every Monday we have what we call our ninja meeting. And that's basically all hands on deck. We start with the wins. We start with challenges. And people are willing to share. But there's certain things that they're not willing to share out of embarrassment, or they're nervous about what I'm going to say in front of everybody, even though I try to be, an open and caring and nurturing team leader. Still, it's the dynamic. So when it's one-on-one, they might say things to me and give me their worries or fears that I can't get from them at the general Monday meetings. And that's really the second part. And then the last part is I ask them, what's preventing you from getting to your next accepted offer? Give me an example. And so from my experience of 10 years in real estate, they tell me where they've hit the wall in any one person. Hey, why don't you text them this? Or why don't you call them and tell them that? Or the next time you see them. And, I end up sometimes looking like the hero, because I was able to give them, from my experience, something they had not yet experienced. And then now it becomes part of their toolkit.
I would imagine that would give you tons of stuff to talk about. Do you do a team meeting as well?
Yeah, Mondays, yeah.
So that would be like, hey, sounds like everybody's having this kind of common issue.
100%.
All right, so if somebody has a new lead, it's in new longer than 24 hours, do they lose it?
They could lose it, yeah.
They could lose it.
Yeah. Because what happens, sometimes they just haven't gotten in there to change or they forgot to change the category.
Yeah.
Sometimes they haven't gotten in to change the category. Fine. If we see notes in there, but it's almost, actually I should say it's almost never the case. If it was the case that they hadn't recorded that they had gotten in touch with them or could provide evidence that they were in touch with them, they probably will lose that consumer.
What about qualified leads? Do you have a standard of how many times they should try to connect with the lead before it goes to an archive or a trash?
That's actually part of our one-on-ones. I will talk about that, and under extreme circumstances, it might go to archive. Trash is only trash if they're trying to sell a carpet cleaning service or something. That's trash. Nothing else is trash. You just haven't gotten through to them yet. You haven't maybe created the right value proposition for them, or they may not be ready for you yet. And that's what I was talking about before. When they're on this journey, this customer journey, they may be too far out to sound serious, but you archive them, you could lose an amazing opportunity 6 months down the road. You know what I'm saying? Right? So I try to, archive is for, hey, sorry, we went to an open house, we made an offer, you were great, I'll tell other people to use you, that kind of thing. That's archive. You've actually lost the opportunity, but you might call them in 3 years and say, hey, how's the house going? You think their agent's in touch with them? You might as well give it a shot.
Do you use a Mojo dialer or anything to keep them accountable or to monitor how many dials they're making, how long they're spending on the phone per week?
Yeah, so we have, in the calendar, we have our hour of power every day, and right now they are single dialing. We've used Vulcan, we've used Mojo Dialer, and for us, and this is probably somewhere where I need to get better as a team leader, but what I did not find it to get the ROI from it. If I gotta sometimes, again, I'm growing as a team leader, where they're at right now and the agents I have on my team, they feel comfortable sitting in their cubicles, picking up the phone, making the calls, and I'm monitoring them. I know they're doing it, and they're having success. I had tried the ISA model, the outbound ISA model. I haven't had success with that either, but that's where I could see triple line dialers and all that stuff going. But we do actually have, here on my phone, we do have, see this? It's a call conversion form that's in Google. Every agent must fill it out every day.
Oh, wow.
About the number of calls, number of contacts, number of appointments, and then it goes to a dashboard that we can see that's actually goes onto the TV on the wall.
Is that part of CTE, maybe? No?
It's not CTE.
Okay.
I'll share with you later, because it's something brand new.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But if you're familiar with CTE, it's something like that, and we do use that. So in those face-to-face meetings, we can sit down. I can sit down with them and also show them, this is how many calls you've made, this is how many appointments you set, this is how many transactions you've done in the last week, month, or however, custom time frame, and I can show them what their conversion rate is. So now I can start to train them to what their particular needs are. If they're making a lot of calls, but they are not converting at maybe a particularly high rate, well, obviously their skills need work. But at least I see they're making the effort. If those numbers aren't correct, well, that's another conversation for a different time. But if they are not making many calls, but converting at a higher rate, wow, imagine what it would be like if you were making more calls. You could reach your goals sooner. Maybe we need to raise your goals, that kind of thing. It becomes a much more personal kind of training environment.
Do y'all do any traditional things like door knocking, open houses, things like that?
Yeah, we're open to all of that. Anything that's going to work. Through the Tom Ferry organization, we try to do the massive or giant open house or whatever we call it. And that's been successful. Again, in this market, there's not a lot of inventory. So I had a personal referral come to me the other day, somebody I really wanted to work with. I knew them from my kids' elementary school. She's really nice, and she's in a tight spot. She needed a particular neighborhood. in the elementary school, nothing available. So I went door knocking, and I found her a house. And
you specifically, went door knocking?
I personally went door knocking. And what that did was, we communicate on Slack. We use Slack, because text message is just too messy. You can't keep track of it. There's the different channels. So through Slack, one of my favorite channels, I love it. It's called Wins, #Wins. And that's where everybody shares their wins. So imagine when the team leader, and this is one argument for maybe the team leader going out there and showing the other agents how it's done. I went out there in one day, found a house, put the deal together, it's going into contract. Now the other agents are like, oh, wow, he did it, so maybe we should too.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. I think for team leaders or team members out there, if their numbers are down, they're having a bad month, really the proof's in the pudding. It's about, how many doors you're knocking on, how many calls you're making, how many appointments you're going on.
Tom Ferry says there's no wrong way to do business.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. Your sphere of influence, oh my God, it's huge. You can't ignore your sphere of influence. The inbound online leads, that's just another tool in the toolbox. But some of the old tried and true are good as well. You just need to change things up. You just need to evolve with it. There are going to be other people door knocking. That guy in your area, I bet you he's door knocking like crazy.
Right.
But I know people like that. I know if I follow up and door knock with a smile and I bring value to that person, if they had seen that other person, they're going to meet me and they're going to be like, whoa, this guy sounds different. And he's talking about what my needs are, and he's talking about how he knows the neighborhood and how his kids are in the, and there's this person who needs this neighborhood. It was a beautiful thing,
And were they like, oh, as a matter of fact, I am thinking of selling.
Yeah. And I had a compelling story because it was true. It was authentic, and I was being authentic.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, man.
Well, that wraps up another Agent 251 podcast. Thanks so much for listening. You can find our show on iTunes, any place you get your podcast fix. We really appreciate the listening, and please share it with your friends. This show has been paid for and powered by JWRE, Jason Will Real Estate. You can find Jason, Diana, and the whole JWRE team on the internet and Facebook. And everybody have a great and productive and happy week.